Hey, welcome to the podcast, Ashtar.
Thanks, Asher. It's it's been a while.
Yeah,
Um, that's funny, kind of a funny moment that we like almost said the same name, but not
right,
really.
right. That's one of the funny things about meeting you. It's like, wait, your name is Ashtar. My name is Asher. Huh.
hmm
Where where did that come from? It's like very, very interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't meet a lot of people with like a similar sounding name or the same name. So it's even funnier that's like we just, you know, run into each other and yeah. But yeah, that was a I think that was like kind of how we started to like talk to each other. Yeah.
Yeah, very, yeah. I think for that very thing, I forget if it was at a conference or with ETA.
Right. Yeah, it was with yeah, it was an Eric Thomas conference. Man, I gotta make it out to one of those again. It's been a while.
Yeah, I,
Um,
I feel like maybe they're having them kind of far and few between. Last year they had the first one back live and in person, and I think it was paired with a getaway resort earlier in the year. And I want to say similar thing this year, maybe different location. They did the Phenomenal Life, and then they're going to do the
mhm,
120 conference.
mhm. Yeah, those are really cool, but it's a little high commitment for me. It's like you got you got to get the hotel room, the whole like it's like a destination
Right.
conference, which is really cool. Like I would love to do it one day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have
Well,
you been to any of them?
I actually went last year. They had the Phenomenal Life retreat in Mexico, and
Uh-huh.
I was able to go and I think maybe do it that year and 2 years before because nothing was happening in 2020.
Of
But it
course.
was
And everything at the same time.
right, right. But it was an interesting experience because it was nice. You get to travel out of the country and being able to do it for a second time around. Like the first time that I went, it was in Jamaica, and then
hmm
this time it was in Cancun, Mexico. So like
Nice.
living on a resort for the better part of I forget if it was a week or maybe 3 days, one of those. But like living there on the resort, being able to enjoy the food, enjoy the message of the conference, and then just be around other people like yourself where you would either meet someone online through Breve University or you meet someone in person for the first time and then you get to connect online afterwards. That part of it, that fellowship, that community went hand in
hmm
hand with the learning portion.
Yeah. It's definitely powerful. I remember that like community is really powerful. I feel like I've made a lot of big transformations in my life, like through community, I'll say. Um, so yeah.
It's fun.
Um,
It's funny
I had
you or my
Go
bad,
ahead.
go ahead.
No, sorry, go ahead.
I couldn't tell if
I hope
the
hope you're
the
editing this.
yeah, I'll have help on the background. But one of the things you mentioned earlier, having a Spanish as your first language, and I'm guessing that would mean having a what's the proper term, a Latin background. But like, is community really
Mhm.
big for you from that background?
It's actually interesting. I think that's a great question, and normally the case is that Latinos or Latinx have large families. We have a lot of like cousins and brothers, sisters, things like that. It's actually I'm an only child. My mom was a first generation immigrant, and so was my father, both from the Dominican Republic. And I think she was the first or the second um of her brothers, and she's it's five brothers and her. So she was like the first or the second here, and she her and my father came, and then they split up, and then it was kind of just me and my mom for the most part, and then I would see my dad and whatnot. But yeah, I didn't have really a lot of family, a lot of cousins here at all. Um, so that's something that I feel like that's why I do seek out different communities as well, is because I kind of don't have a lot of family. But yeah, I think that what's really great about community, I guess the way I'll stop teasing. I feel like I'm holding back on the why community's been good for me. I think that one thing has been, so when I joined Breathe University, I remember that we would have the daily accountability calls, and those were really really awesome, like 6 a.m. accountability calls. But that was perfect because I had work at like 7:30, and we started doing like workouts. I think it was like 100-day challenge of workouts, and it was like no matter what it is, even if it's like a 15-minute workout, a 10-minute workout. um I think what was her name? Rochelle, I think.
Yeah, Rochelle T. Parks.
Yeah, yeah. She made like a series of workouts, and those were, I mean, that was like the beginning of something for me, because I use those every day. Even if I was working so much, I had like, I think, I don't know if at that time I was doing full-time school and full-time work. It might have been, had a few moments like those, few years of those in my life. Wake up and do it every single day. Did it for 100 days straight, and along with like if on my days off I would do longer workouts. By the end of that year, I had been like, after the 100-day challenge, I kept working out every single day, and it had become really automatic at that point. Um, and that was my most consistent period of taking any breaks or anything. Because you'll start the gym, and then you do 3 months, and then you take 3 months off, and then you do another 3 months. I don't know if you've ever had that experience.
Oh yeah, definitely.
um, mhm. Yeah. So where was I going with that? Yeah, I just think community is powerful. So that's one example, and I have another one too, but we can talk about that when it comes up.
Got you. But I guess before I get too far down, who do you say you are as a way to introduce you to the audience?
Who do I say that I am? Um, okay. Well, my name is Ashtar, obviously, and I would say that I am someone who, wait, is this a deep answer or like just an introduction?
It's whatever you want it to be.
Okay, okay. You ever seen that interview with Jay-Z where he's like, who, I think it was Nardwar. He's like, who are you? And Jay-Z's, he's like, I'm a groundbreaking, like curious person, whatever, something like that. And Nardwar's like, I was just asked, like, just introduce yourself to the audience.
No, this I have seen that, but this one isn't a trick question. It's just however you want to answer it.
Okay. Um, well, I'm a guy who has transformed himself many times in my life. One of my favorite quotes is actually by Jay-Z, and it's uh you don't what is it? It's like, I design myself. I can't remember the first part, but I just remember that, like specifically that. It's like, I design myself. And I really like that, because it's kind of like, although we have all these influences in our lives, we have our parents, we have our friends, we have people that we look up to. We take all that in. I take all that in, but I also try to think about how I want to do things, and how I can keep growing as a person, step outside of the box, do things that my friends aren't doing, and then hopefully introduce them to that too, bring them along. So So I like that. I feel like I'm a person that transcends like worlds. That sounds crazy, but I mean like communities, you know, or like cultures, like things like that. Um, yeah. So that's what I would say I am. I'm like cautious and curious. It's a weird mix.
Gotcha. Why do you say that sounds crazy, being a person that transcends worlds?
I guess some people could hear it in like a very um spiritual way, and I'm a spiritual person as well, but you know, I guess I was trying to clarify what I meant.
Gotcha. You don't want people thinking you're just hopping universes.
Exactly. Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah.
But one of the things you were sharing with me earlier was about how your experience or what it is that you do has changed recently. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. Um, so I went to school to study nutrition, and I became a dietitian, and I think that was my first passion. Um, but after spending some time in the field, I felt like I could do more, and also I think I personally could make a bigger impact in other areas. Whereas some of my colleagues were, you know, that was like a perfect fit for them. Because I still really love nutrition. I think that's a great, like, helping people be healthier is really important to me, and I still carry that with me. But the transformation that I made is I decided to pursue software engineering, or programming computers, and I basically I did a boot camp. It took about a year, and I did it while still working my old job. You know, I would work from 9 to 5 or 10 to 6, something like that, and then come home and grind out and learn for like 3 hours every night or something like that. And I also studied a lot on the weekends. But it's been really great because you know, I doubled my salary in the span of a year, um, which has been really great for me, for my family, for my partner. Um, I feel I feel like, you know, I feel safer being more generous, if that makes sense. It's like I always want to help people, but now that I feel like I have a good financial base, like it's easier to just be more generous, give a larger tip, things like that. And that really, like, you know, makes me feel good. I think I don't I try not to make it like an ego thing or anything, um but yeah, I think that that's been a really powerful thing to kind of prove to myself that I could do that as well, like to make that change, to go through that process. You know, I really pushed myself, learned a lot, and I took a leap of faith. Like halfway through, I quit my job, or not halfway, but near the end of the program, quit my job, and then I just committed completely to that process for like 3 4 months, and then I ended up getting a job. Um, I was lucky; I had a little bit of savings that I've been building over the years, so that was good. But you know what's really interesting is actually I think one of the keys that helped me was I heard about this concept of like the impossible goal. Have you ever heard of that?
No, tell me about it.
So the impossible goal is the idea of, at the beginning of the year, set a goal that almost feels impossible. It feels almost out of reach, and that's going to be the goal that you're going to get done by the end of the year. And it's kind of like, even if you don't get there, it's you're going to get really far, right? And so I had set my impossible goal. I was like, I'm going to get a job as a software engineer making $90,000 by July. That's what I said. And at the time, that felt that was like, I don't know how I'm gonna do that. Um, like to go from zero programming knowledge, never like, yeah, I messed around with computers, like any kid does, but I didn't know anything about programming computers or how to build websites or anything like that. Um, and then it's funny because I end up getting a job by August making $95,000. And kind of feels weird to say the numbers, but anyway, um that that felt really good. Like, even though it wasn't July, right? But it was like August, like that's like crazy, August or September, I think. Um, so that just like proves the point that like you can really do a lot as long as you like commit fully and just go through that process, you know?
Yeah. I I almost missed that until you restated it when you set the goal in July to have this job by August, and all the while you're going through the process of studying to become a software engineer. And
So
you're or okay, go ahead.
so actually I set the goal in January.
Okay.
I set the goal in January so I started the program in like October.
Okay.
At that point, I started getting like goosebumps. I really felt like, oh, this could be like a really good thing for me. I really like felt a connection to it,
Mhm.
right? By January, I had heard about this concept, and then I like set the goal for
Mhm.
June or July. And then the months went by, and then I ended up getting the job in like August or September.
Gotcha. Okay. I think,
Yeah.
and I like you said, even pointing out the figure, it does feel weird, but I think that that's important to give kind of a what's the word? Like a proper perspective, because it's am I frozen?
No, it's
Okay,
working.
gotcha. Because I think that gives a proper perspective, because you went from um being a nutritionist and doing that as your job, but then setting your sights on something else and working towards that while you're still keeping your job and not just quitting. But
Mm-hmm.
then you bet on yourself to say, okay, I see something in this, and I'm going to, you have savings, work with that, and go into this thing without a guarantee of having a
Mm-hmm.
job at the end of it. And then even setting the goal in January to say, I want this by June. June comes, July comes, August comes. It's like you're still having to believe in the thing that you do, but instead of just waking up and saying like, oh, I believe in this thing, I believe in this thing, it's like you're so far into the work that you're doing, you're not um
Mm-hmm.
harassed by the goal of just like, oh, I've got to get this done. It didn't happen this month. It's got to happen. It's like with what you said, I feel like I heard kind of that relief of like, this is what I'm going to do, but also I'm going to allow room in there for that. Like, this is going to happen and I'm going to put the work there,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not going to obsess or try to control when it happens, even though I set the framework ahead of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think that I really felt like, I knew that this could work. I believed in myself. Like, that sounds corny, but kind of like I knew what I was capable of, and I knew the pace at which I was learning, getting better, and where the industry was. I knew that it's an industry that hires that has a high demand for workers. They have a shortage of engineers. And so I was like, well, if I keep grinding at this, if I keep getting better, I focus on the process, I focus on what I'm learning and what I'm producing and putting out, then, it's going to happen for me. Um, yeah, I left my job in April. I left my job in April, and basically had spent those 2 months, my goal was June, July, and then I kept pushing, kept pushing, kept pushing, and then I ended up getting like August, September. Um, So yeah, I think that was a very real example of like walking by faith instead of walking by sight, right? Um, and I used to say that mantra to myself all the time in the morning, but I guess it's kind of the thing where you say it, but you don't know if you're actually practicing it, you know, until the time comes and then you're like, am I really about this or not? So yeah, that was that, and that's a conscious decision that you make, right? I think any transformation that you make, any moves that you make, it has to be a very conscious decision. It can't just be like if it happens or maybe, it's like, no, this is what I'm gonna do. Yeah.
Right. Man, that's powerful. And I knew we had to have this conversation because it's not always it's not always clear how things happen from the outside looking in, whether it's like through social media or from even not being in your shoes, like, or having a conversation with you from October of last year to or that would have been October of 2020 to uh August or September of last year, 2021.
Yeah.
Got you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Gotcha. And what's funny is it's like the just a similar experience on my end, going from taking the opposite approach in 2019 instead of being in a job where I should have sought an alternative, but instead I kind of mulled over, and it's like, well, if it happens, it happens. And clearly that didn't work out. And then going from living on my savings for 6 months and then kind of just being like, okay, well, I guess this will work. And then having a little bit of energy. It's something back to what you said about community, like plugging back into the communities, doing
Hmm.
something like the 100-day challenge, where it's whether it's a physical challenge that you set out or like a daily goal that you put and you say, okay, I'm going to do this thing to either one, build up a discipline, or to really develop a love or an appreciation for something that I'm doing. And that way it's like once the discipline or like the
Hmm.
need to, or the what's the other word that they use? Like your willpower. Once your willpower goes away, you got to find another reason
Hmm.
to keep doing the thing you said you wanted to do. Otherwise you end up questioning
Right.
like, did I know what I was talking about? It's like, oh yeah, the walk by faith thing. It sounds nice, but this this situation doesn't feel too good. But
Right.
it's being able to have that practical application of going through something. It's not always easily explained, but the
Hmm.
way in which you shared the story, I think, is it's very easy for me to kind of understand, because it's like going from 2019 through 2020 wasn't easy per se, but like in that time, I learned something about myself. I learned um, that I needed to have something outside of work to help me create. But also, I learned that
Hmm.
time away from engineering, which is what I did in construction,
Hmm.
a part of me still liked that. Maybe I stayed too long in an environment which wasn't benefiting me, but I still found value in being able to help other people.
Hmm.
And after the fact, it's like there was a new job in 2020, and then that was kind of short term with the pandemic, and then similar thing pulling away, and then looking at the start of 20, because we're in 2022 now. I keep
I
trying
know.
to, like, these 2 years they just feel like a mix, but like
Hmm.
going from just throwing my hands up and being like, well, I don't know what to do right now, to, okay, let me work towards an opportunity. And
Hmm.
then the opportunity is kind of there, but then that drive kind of fades away. And then it's going back, starting again to say, okay, let me just do some, like, let me just do a local job and then find appreciation in that thing, to where I'm working away at something, getting discouraged, sending out emails and just trying, like, whether it's LinkedIn, Zip
Mm.
Recruiter, this thing or that. You're just sending, and it's like the rejection rate is just off the charts. And then to have an opportunity come out of where I wasn't expecting it from, and
Mhm.
just being able to be like, "Hey, is this something you want to do?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll give it a shot." While this time doing my job, but pursuing the other one was a much better approach.
Mm. So, so you had your construction engineering job, and then you left, you took some time off, and then you kind of found another job, and in that meantime, you started the podcast and what catch me up, man. We haven't talked in a while.
Right, right. I'm sorry, I kind of jumbled that up and I might have to edit this, but okay, here's what happened.
Yeah,
So
sorry to
no,
if I messed it up.
this is perfectly fine. You didn't mess it up. I was trying to time the what's happening outside to what's happening inside, but give me 1 minute.
And I'll say, like, on my end, I hear it, but it's kind of like a hum in the background. Like, it's not very loud. I don't know how it'll come post-production, how it'll sound, but it doesn't sound too bad to me.
Got you. But they, um, my editor is usually really good, but I'm doing better about presenting something that's not as hard to work with. But okay, here's what happened for
Yeah,
yourself.
don't mute yourself, because like I think it's good to hear like the feedback of like when I'm talking, and then like you respond right away, or like
Right,
you laugh or whatever,
I
you
got
know?
you. Right, right,
I
right.
mean, do what you feel is right, but
I
it's just
got
my
you.
feeling, you know.
So, okay, January of 2019 was the time when I left the construction job before leaving the construction job. So basically, I checked
Mm,
out mentally. I was I thought at least I was happy with the work that I was getting to do, working on a multi-billion-dollar job, being a part of a small group that's very effective at what they do, helping in the construction of a new nuclear project that hasn't been built in America for over 40 years at this point, since the incidents of 3 Mile
oh,
Island and Chernobyl on the other side of the world.
the internet
Internet's acting up.
that's slowed down a little bit.
Got you.
Sorry.
No, no, it's no problem. We're figuring it
Hello?
out.
Sorry, yeah, that was the first time it really it sucks because it
N-
that was great. And then the internet just messes it all up.
I it's fine. I was just telling someone else it's like it's hit or miss out here with the internet, but I think it's going, so I'll
Mm,
try to keep going with it. But basically, start of 2019, January, I I was trying to figure out, okay, do I keep working this construction job? But was mentally checked out. So I had to take some time from, say, January to May, not being at work, but still being
mm,
around the same area. And then I think I went back for a few months, but I had to take care of myself personally, and
mhm,
yeah. And I left officially, I think in June, went back, spent time with my parents, and it was kind of taking some time to get some feedback and really answer, what is it that I want to do now? It's like I'm not working an engineering job. I'm not doing anything productive. Like I'm not getting out of out of my house. Like I went from maybe doing nothing for a good period of 4 months to, okay, like being home, like going back out to the local track and just walking around, and like just trying to, kind of similar to what you were talking about, like doing a physical activity or doing something that would get me motivated, build up some
mhm,
confidence, and really try to find an answer to what it was that I wanted to do next. So, and in order to kind of get back into a community or get around some energy, I went to one of the ETA conferences in I forget where it was at. It might have been in Philly, but I went there August of 2019 and I set a goal. I wrote down I want to start a podcast because it's something that had been in the back of my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And after I wrote it down, I was like, yeah, this is great. But then I went home and I was just like, I'll forget about it. I don't want to think about that stuff.
Yeah.
So I kind of went back to feeling sorry for myself and just moping about. And thankfully had a good friend that from January through that time and even now, you just would check in and be like, hey, what's going on? Like whenever you don't communicate or you get like it's okay to be by yourself, but when you kind of don't answer or you don't reach out or things like that, something isn't right. And instead
Mm-hmm.
of following a pattern of just like, okay, when things don't go Asher's way, he just folds into himself and hides away from the world. It's like, what's
Mm-hmm.
your plan? Are you going to go back to work? Are you going to pursue something else? And I was like, I don't know. I said I'd tried podcasting. Maybe I'll try doing the podcast. And I think even before going to the conference, I went to a men's retreat and I met one of the guys from the men's prayer line. And basically, in having a conversation with him, we connected and just spoke over the phone. And I recorded an episode with him after we had like a 45-minute conversation and I forgot to hit record. So I was like, hey, can you help me do this thing? So like in doing little steps like going to the track and going to the men's retreat and going to that conference and saying like, okay, maybe I can try to make a podcast to
Mm-hmm.
just have a hobby. Like initially it was like, okay, it can start as a hobby. Maybe I can make it a business, support myself. We'll see. Like by
Mm-hmm.
the end of the year, I was rushing to do that with more like I started driving Uber. I started recording more frequently throughout the week because I just had time on my hands. But
Mm-hmm.
by the end of the year, I think I'd also started speaking with someone through coaching and counseling, and they were helping me just to um, acknowledge what it was that I had and what it was that I could do for myself. So then, and even getting help, it started out by just getting help, getting my resume redone and having someone else
Mm-hmm.
do it for me so that I didn't keep stacking up. Okay, I need to do this. It's like I kept making checklists of stuff that I just couldn't be bothered to even do. So
Mm-hmm.
in all of that, that was the year 2019. By the end of it, I was applying for jobs, getting feedback, going and doing interviews. And in that whole process, I was able to land a few interviews, eventually get an offer from FEMA, which I started in January of 2020, traveled to Puerto Rico and worked
Wow.
there for 3 months until, or 2.5 months until the pandemic hit, everything shut down. And then it's
Mm.
trying to work from home again and figure out, okay, what's next? Like,
Yeah, that must
it's
have been
just,
like a smack in the face.
yeah. And it's just like the constant cycle of doing all this stuff and then like just putting it all down because it's like there wasn't anything in place to say, okay, when you're not working, here's how you can enjoy your leisure time. Or when you're not doing this, like
Mm-hmm.
go do something else. So that's what that whole cycle from like 2019 going into 2020 going into 2021, which was really 2020 felt like a repeat of 2019, but then um I think
Mm.
by the how did 2020 just it just felt like a wash so to speak. But
Yeah.
by the by the end of it or by the start of 2021, it was really about like what I've been doing isn't working. Like the way I've been trying to make progress has worked for a little bit, so long as I was willing to stick with it. But then
Mm-hmm.
what came after is like, okay, I need to work a local job just to have something to do. And then if I can stand
Mm-hmm.
hearing myself back doing a podcast, like I'll start podcasting again. So all that to say that that's what's been going on with me. So 2021 was really working at Home Depot, which was a local store, but working on the night shift, traveling to like 5 different stores within the area with like an hour from my house, and working uh how would you say, a regular job, so to speak, or like a seasonal job. And
Mm-hmm.
again, putting the resumes back out there, but getting back around people and really, um, really doing the work on myself and continuing to grow a little bit and answer questions that I'd been avoiding or I hadn't really paid attention to for a
Mm-hmm.
long time. So that's what's happened from probably the time that I met you to now us having this conversation. It's just been that continuous growth and really facing some of the things I've been avoiding and dealing with,
Mm-hmm.
um, what I needed to deal with, and still understanding that today I still need to deal with that, because anything that
Mm-hmm.
I put away or suppress and don't deal with, it multiplies. Like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's like that saying, conflict delayed is conflict multiplied.
Mm. You know, I actually never heard that before, but that's really true. Um, and how long have you been doing the podcast now? Oh, your audio. Oh, you're muted.
I forgot. Oh man. Thanks for the heads up. The podcast, it'll be 3 years
No
come
problem.
October. So yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah,
That's awesome, man. Um, yeah. I think one thing that stands out of what you were saying, and thanks for catching me up, um, is kind of like the snowball rolling down the hill, and it's like start small, just go out, start walking around the track, just start doing something, right? Something small, and then add a little more and do something else. And there's moments where maybe we fall back into something into an old habit, and then we pull ourselves out again, right? And just keep pushing, and eventually that keeps building.
yeah,
um I think that's key. And that's definitely one way that I also like got myself out of a rut.
mm,
But also I think the other part is like the self reflection, right? Like asking
mhm,
yourself those questions and figuring out like, what do I actually want, you know, not just letting life happen to you, right? It's just like
yeah,
you gotta actually work through these things. You gotta actually like talk about it, think it through. Um, so yeah, I think one
yeah,
thing that's helped me is I think in 2019 I got a therapist. Um, I got a black therapist, and I started doing group therapy, and I did individual and group, and that was great because it's kind of like I'm not just in my head anymore. I can actually voice these things and get feedback.
yeah,
And I think that's pretty similar to like how you're saying, like you'll retreat, but like your friend would come and like talk to you and like be like, hey, what are you doing? What's your plan? Um, and I think that's like, so that's like one aspect of community, right? It's like even if I'm paying for therapy, it's still community in a way, right?
yeah,
um like, so your friend, like, I think that's really important, really huge. I actually completely forgot to mention is in my transformation with this boot camp with the software engineering, I forgot to mention the community part. That was like the most important part because this group, it was like a whole bunch of people. So there was this guy, his name is Leon,
mm,
and Leon Noel. So you can find him on like YouTube and Twitch and stuff like that. But he came out, he put out a big Reddit post, and he was like, I'm a software engineer. I'm a teacher of software engineers. You know, I've been at this boot camp and this boot camp, this boot camp. The pandemic is affecting millions of people. People are losing their jobs. I'd love to help with that.
Mm.
I want to give everyone access to a completely free software engineering education. And he's like, as long as you put in the work, like I'm gonna show up and help you at every step of the way.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people really didn't believe him in the beginning, but he kept his word, and he really was really consistent with this. And I committed completely to it. And so did a lot of other people. And so we all kind of kept each other going, you know, and we were all learning together. And that really helped me like keep pushing forward and keep showing up, keep putting in the hours. So yeah, I think if I was doing it alone, I mean, for years I've been like, oh, I'm kind of interested in programming. Oh, let me sign up for like this info session for some boot camp,
Yeah.
and then like never do anything about it, you know? I'm just like, or like go on, you know, free code camp like one time.
Yeah.
So I think yeah, like speaking what you want to do, putting it out into the world and having people hold you accountable, also finding people who are on similar paths and just
Mm.
like sharing with them and going through the process with them. That's like a really big part to for me, like to stick to something.
Yeah.
Um so
That's a great point. I'm glad you brought that back, because the community aspect is a huge thing. And for me, even doing the podcast, it's like getting over the nervousness took some getting used to, but like having feedback from other people that podcast and joining a group like the morning meetup with Dave Shands and seeing what he does for entrepreneurs and kind of sharing with people the mindset you have to make what you're doing matter, and also referring back to the social media group with Brief University and different things like that, where they talk about how you're supposed to introduce yourself to an audience, and people will only work with you if they know, like, and trust you. And if you're able
mhm,
to communicate those things through what you do, then that's how you begin to build and attract. But even for me, one thing that I had to be willing to do was I had my hands in so many communities, or I was a member of so many groups. I really had
mhm,
to pull back and like stop following so many groups. I had to take time away and like really give time to myself. And that came from the counseling piece and being able to um communicate with someone that would hold me accountable, and also not feel bad about how I felt about it, because at first it the concept of speaking to someone about my personal self that I've never really shared with anyone was a lot to take in. But
mhm,
like
mhm,
be befriending the person and really getting to know them and them getting to know me helped along the way. And just knowing where to plug into those communities, and like and having just one or two versus 5 to 10, it was like, okay, I don't have to come in here and problem solve, where I can let go of the need to want to be helpful, because it's like, and other times where I just felt like I was the younger person, always just taking, taking, taking. It's like I don't
mhm,
want to just be that, but I have, like, I'm even learning just this week. It's like I've got to revisit becoming unattached to things and really addressing, writing down, and talking through what it is that offends me, or what it is that kind of like reattaches me to a situation, a conversation, an emotion, or thing like that. But
mhm,
I really liked what you said about how community helped you through becoming a software engineer, and just following through with someone that was willing to come alongside you and help you through the process, to where it's not just I had this goal, put it together, I did it myself. Yeah, I'm the champion. It's like
Mm-hmm.
There's always more layers to it, and just being able to take a minute and reflect on it really helps us. Like it kind of uncovers things that you might have forgotten about, or think about things you may not have considered before. So that's very
Mm-hmm.
powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I think that I agree, that's something I need to revisit as well. Like sometimes I find myself either kind of always moving on to the next thing and never taking the time to really think about what happened or what's happening or how I'm reacting to things. Um, is one thing. And then the other thing is like um I also have like a pattern of avoidance, and that's something that like helps and hurts, because I
Mhm.
think it comes out of like an adaptiveness. It's like you go through something in life and how you deal with it is you just don't think about it. You just keep moving, you know, but that catches up to you eventually, like you said, like with the conflict. What was the quote? It's like
It's conflict avoided is conflict multiplied.
yeah. And that's really like it's in there. You think you're just moving on, but it's really in there. And at some point it's gonna come out, crashing out. And I think I kind of lost the thread of what we were just talking about. So I don't want to change or not answer the
No,
question.
no, you're good. I don't think I asked a question, but like you were sharing about, you really highlighted community being a big factor as the transition you made from being a nutritionist to becoming a software
Mhm,
engineer, and the person on Reddit that was involved in really putting the call out there and actually honoring his word and what he said to, this is what I'm willing to do, and if you're willing to work, I'll work with you.
mhm. Yeah, but so you were sharing about the counselor that you got to know and how
Oh, the two things that I'm working on.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I said for this week, one thing we had to revisit, and part of my homework is to be aware or take notice of what it is. Okay, no, let me rephrase that. Practice being unattached to like whatever is going on around me, whether it's a conversation that I'm in, a talk that I'm listening to, a situation, or an emotion that comes up. It's like if I feel uncomfortable, I have to be willing to detach from that. But a
Mhm,
lot of times the attachments that come in, or if I feel offended by something, that offense is usually steeped in fear. So in
mhm,
order to address the offense properly, I've got to write down or be willing to answer, why is it that I'm offended by what just happened? And by
mhm,
doing that, I found that it stems to childhood relationships that I thought I addressed, but again, kind of
mhm,
speaking to the conflict point, there are things I didn't really address. And the way that I'm being offended, or I'm feeling offended, is I'm feeling offense from the little boy or that child that was offended at the time that that specific scenario happened. So, like, for
mhm,
example, I was listening to a talk yesterday by a gentleman named Myron Golden, and he was
mhm,
giving a talk from the Bible, and I think he was talking about the Adam and Eve being in the Garden of Eden, and how they were given he was talking about, the title is called um how lack creates, I may be forgetting this. Give me a minute. Let me look it up so I don't,
take your time with it,
yeah,
yeah.
let me not. I think it's important because what's interesting about it is like when something triggers, when something like that just kind of triggered my thought. Okay, this is what it's called.
Mhm,
Poverty is always a result of spiritual warfare. So that was the title of his video on YouTube. And as he's talking
Mm,
about it, he brings it up as explaining lack and how Adam and Eve are in the Garden of Eden, and God gives them the commandment that they're able to eat from any tree freely that's been planted in this garden. And that the way in which he speaks is very clear. It's like, you can do this, but you should not eat from the tree of knowledge and the tree of good and evil, for
mhm.
surely you will die. So I'm sure I probably misquoted that depending on what version someone may be reading from. But the thing that he said was that um, the thing that he said was that the way in which, let me go back to it. I'm going to do this side by side. So,
Mm. Poverty is a lack of spiritual warfare.
no,
No, I said that completely wrong. But in
you're
my
fine.
head, poverty is the result of spiritual warfare, right? Something like that.
Yes, yes, you got it right the second time. So the okay, yes, poverty is always a result of spiritual warfare. And the way that he was explaining it is that in presenting the principle of lack, where lack is in when lack is introduced, that's a way that we war with ourselves. Like when we typically focus on things, we focus on what we don't have. We're not quick to be appreciative of what we do have, and that's where people will war with themselves. So the reason for him bringing the Adam and Eve story really speaks to, you have humans or mankind essentially depend, like he went into it in very good detail, and it's a lot of different things to pick up on. But the main thing that I didn't catch it the first time, but the second time I listened back to it because I wanted to have something clear in my head about what it was that I learned, not necessarily to bring it here. I didn't anticipate sharing it, but hopefully I can tie this all back in. But is the internet still working?
Audio's cutting up a little. Hey.
Hey, thank you for the patience. I think maybe the internet is what it is, but I feel like
Yeah.
I was over explaining my explanation. But essentially, I was bringing up the story from the video that I was watching yesterday to explain that
Mhm.
in me listening to the story, he posed a question that would have usually been posed by someone asking in the story of Adam and Eve, why would God place something in an environment which, like, why would God place a tree that he doesn't want his children or his creation to eat from if um if that's his intention? Am I still coming through, or did it freeze back up again? Can you see me?
Why would he place them there? I think frozen again.
Yeah, okay. I'm tempted to move the router in here and see what it will do. Give me